Hello, and thank you for viewing my session on transparency in learning and teaching. TILT is the acronym, before and after. My name is Tracy. I'm an instructional designer at Clovis Community College, and I'm going to get started. I'm going to first talk about the goals for this session. So in this session, we will go over the TILT framework, and I'm going to show you the difference between a TILT assignment and a non-TILT assignment. So by the end of this session, you should be able to compare a TILT assignment and a non-TILT assignment and create your own TILT assignments. So I want to start with a quick reflection. And before I get into this, I want to say at any point, if you need to stop the recording and reflect, or stop the recording and write something down, or stop and post in the Padlet, or whatever you'd like to do, please feel free to do so. I'm not going to build in a lot of pause time because this is recorded. So just go ahead and hit that pause for any pause time that you need on your own. So, quick reflection. So, either thinking about when you were a student, how you felt about assignments in your classes, or as an instructor, if you're surveying your students, what kinds of things are they telling you about your assignments? What kinds of things are you seeing from your students? If you're grading, what kinds of areas of frustrations are there? Are you finding that your students are struggling with any parts of your assignments? I know before I redid all of my assignments in the TILT framework, that oftentimes I would feel like dog ate when I was grading, because my students, it always seemed like I was being so clear and my students were just not turning in what I wanted them to turn in. So, kind of looking at, if you want to think about how you're feeling on the dog scale, go ahead, but just also just kind of reflect on where you're feeling stuck in your assignments, in writing prompts, in grading, in doing all those things, because that's going to be where the TILT framework can come in and help. So the TILT framework isn't a whole lot. There's only 3 components to it. And kind of the basic underlying idea of the framework is that you're going to explain to your students why you're having them do the assessments that you're having them do. I know it's revolutionary. So when we're working on making a more transparent assignment, it's going to help give our students a more clear understanding of the expectations of the assignment. It's going to help increase relevance. They'll know why they're doing the assignment and how it's going to help them in the future. It's going to help metacognition. So it's going to help them learn how to be a better learner. It's going to help their own self-awareness, areas where they may be feeling confused or need extra help in, and it will help students to better monitor their own progress. A part of the framework is steps and thinking of things as scaffolding, and so that's going to help our students better monitor their own progress. It's also going to help you as the faculty member look and reflect on the assignments that you have and how they meet the outcomes of your course. Again, as I was going through my own assignments in my class, there were a few that I've had my students doing for years. And when I went through and really thought about what is the purpose of this assignment, it was hard for me to think of why I was having my students do that assignment, except that I've just always had them do it. And especially with online classes, it's so easy for those classes to get bloated. And so when you're going through with the TILT framework and thinking about the purpose, task, and criteria of each assignment, it's really going to help you narrow down to the things that are just the most important pieces in your class. So it is an equitable framework. It's going to help us frame assignments so that all of our students can start at the same starting point, no matter how the amount of information they knew about it beforehand, or what they might know about what a good version of that thing looks like, because we're going to share that information with them. And so this is a framework that has been researched, and the research continues to show that incorporating elements of this transparent assignment design into our assessments can demonstratively enhance student success, and particularly for those students from systematically non-dominant populations. So I'll share a resource site at the end where you can go through and kind of dig through the research on your own. So talking about the three components of the tilt framework, starting with purpose. So the purpose is where we're going to communicate to the students what knowledge or skills they will gain from completing the assignment, and how that knowledge or skills will be valuable, either for the rest of the class or for the rest of their college career or post college. So there's a few kinds of questions to reflect on as you're thinking about the purpose of your assignment. And it's broken into knowledge and skills. So thinking about what will your students gain from completing the assignment? How does that knowledge relate to other topics in your course or other courses if they're on a cycle? And how will that knowledge be relevant for your students in their lives beyond your course or beyond college? And if you also want to include skills, what skills are they practicing while doing the assignment? How do those skills relate to the other contexts or examples within your course or beyond? And how will these skills be valuable to their students in their lives in your course or beyond? The second part is task. And task is going to look at the steps that the students should take to complete the assignment. And it's really like a step focused component. Are the steps needed to complete the assignment laid out clearly? And really go through the steps that you have in your current prompts, and thinking about, are there any things there that are just implied? And if so, try to make them more explicit. What are the common pitfalls that students encounter with this assignment, and where might we be able to add a task on that list to help them avoid that? And then, are there opportunities for students to get feedback on parts of the assignment before the larger assignment is due? So if your if your assignment is really large, you can think about adding in multiple checkpoints throughout, and giving them the opportunity to make sure they're on the right track before they get too far down into the assignment. The third part is criteria. Well before the assignment is due, even maybe as you're giving them the assignment prompt to begin with, share with the students how they're going to be evaluated on their work. So if you're using a rubric, share with them the rubric and explain it to them. Does the rubric make sense to the student? Um, you know, is the rubric connected to the assignment in a way that that makes sense, that would match the steps on the task list? And then, are there opportunities for students to evaluate their own work or other student work so that they can kind of practice seeing what each one of those criteria will look like? And you can always also share examples of good work, even that you've created yourself or that you've previous students have submitted. So I'm going to show you now the transparent assignment template, and I'm sorry, it's very small, but again, I'll share the resource page so you can go. This is available for downloading. It's the same kinds of things that I went over just now with purpose, task, and criteria. It gives a little bit of an explanation as to what kind of goes into each component, but then also visually you can kind of see now how the assignment is going to be laid out. And so it helps you also not just incorporate all these components, but then share it in a way that is easy to navigate for the students, and that is consistent. So it'll be consistent across all of your assignments. So I want to show you two examples from STEM, since oftentimes when we're talking about equity and bringing in equitable practices, it seems like it's a little bit harder to do in the sciences. And so these are two prompts for exams. And so this is the first prompt from one of my faculty before they went through my transparent training. And so it does have quite a bit of information on it. So it does say the rubric, there is connected to the learning objectives, there's points for each objective. And then it talks about that it's a Canvas quiz tool, that you'll receive reminders online through Canvas. As Canvas is down, the answers can be emailed, and each question has instructions for how it should be answered. So in their minds, the student downloads the worksheets, they complete it offline, take pictures of it, and then post it to the Canvas assignment. So again, this is something that is fine on its own, but there are steps that are implied, and then there are things that can be a little bit more clear. So a different faculty member, after going through the training, put together this for their first exam. So again, you can see how it's starting to follow that template that we were looking at. Purpose. I have designed exam 1 to test your proficiency between week 1 and week 6. So now the students know what pieces of the class that they're going to be tested on. By preparing for the exam, you're doing these things that are going to help us later on in our class. This faculty member included knowledge and skills. You can do, again, it's either or. If you want to include a lot, you can include a lot, but it doesn't have to be this much. But so here's all the things that the students are going to be able to do by doing the exam, and then the skills that they're going to be practicing. So then we get down to our task list. And when taking a test, you would think the students would just, here's the test. You can step 1, take the test. Step 2, turn in the test, but I really liked the way that this particular faculty member broke down the tasks in that it talks about the types of questions. And so sometimes, especially with test taking, there's quite a bit of anxiety about what kinds of questions am I going to be asked? And is it all going to be multiple choice? Are there going to be essay questions? There's this fear of the test maybe being a little harder than I had anticipated. So I really liked the way that even on an exam, they broke down the types of questions and what all the point value and everything's going to look like. So you're going to first complete these multiple choice questions. You're going to have 20 terms, that is a definition. There are 6 short answer questions, and then you'll identify 12 local species and indicate if they're native. And then you'll be able to retake the exam 1 week after the exam. So right away, you can sense the amount of anxiety that might pull, especially in a student who doesn't see themselves as being a science person, and maybe is not, it's the first 6 weeks of the class, maybe it's their first college class. So that's going to help them a whole lot. And then the third part is criteria. And so the other part that I really loved about this, in that even in an exam, the faculty member is giving them examples. And so, especially with those short answer or fill in the blank type questions, you know, um, the species identification, if asked, what species is this? You'll give 2 points for the scientific name and 1 point for the common name. So you do not need to know the scientific names for birds, and we'll receive 2 points for the common name to any bird species. The names must be specific to receive credit. I try to be as fair as possible when it comes to spelling. So again, those are things that the students might not have known. They've never taken an exam in this class before. They might not have taken a science exam before. And so these are things that may have been something that you've always known as a faculty, and maybe you might have told a student if they had a question about it. But on this, now it's posted, and it's posted before they take the exam. They know, okay, well, I need to know the scientific name for all the species besides birds, and just the common name for all the birds. And that's really going to help them focus their studying and be more successful on this assignment. And then he's also sharing the short answers. So you can see it's quite a difference in these two overviews. So they're both going to be the same thing at the end. The student's going to take a test, but this student who receives this and ahead of taking the test is probably going to feel a little bit more at ease as they're taking the test. They'll know exactly what they're going to be tested on. They'll know what to focus their studying on, and they even have a rundown of the exam structure itself. That's all I have time for today. There are a lot of resources. The main website is Tilt Higher Ed, and so I will share that, in the little section for this presentation. What I would love is if you have the time and you feel so inspired and you want to start going through and looking at before and after versions of your own assignments, if you would take snippets of them, either copy paste or take screenshots and share them in the Padlet for this section. I love seeing when assignments are built out and made a little bit more thoughtful. And I would also love to hear about what you think about this. If you have any questions, if you want to talk about more specific examples, or if you just want to reach out, my email is here, and I'll be monitoring the Padlet too. Thank you so much for viewing my session, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.